The helicopter careened out of control, the rotor blades slicing through the Hawaiian sky like a madman's scythe. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, gripped the controls with all his might, his knuckles white. Below, the lush green landscape of Hawaii, blurred into a chaotic mosaic of colors. The chopper's engine roared, a mechanical beast gone wild. Out of nowhere, a car swerved to avoid the falling metal, but it was too late. It spun out of control, skidding into a ditch. Elvis's heart pounded in his chest. He was the king, but in that moment, he was just a man fighting to regain control. Finally, with a desperate heave, he steadied the chopper. The vehicle shuddered, then slowly descended to a safer altitude. Elvis's breath came in ragged gasps. He had survived, but the incident left a mark, a shadow over his perfect image. The sky was a brilliant blue, the kind that only Hawaii could offer. The sun beat down, relentless, as Elvis landed the chopper on a small clearing. He stepped out, the tropical air warm and humid. The crash site was just a short walk away. The car was mangled. The driver, John Dowsett, a Federal Aviation Agency agent, was shaken but alive. Elvis rushed to his side, his face a mix of concern and guilt. "Are you okay, man?" Elvis asked, his voice tinged with southern charm. John Dowsett, still in shock, looked up at the famous face. I think so. What the hell happened?" Elvis helped Dowsett to his feet, his mind racing. This could end his flying career, and with it, his dreams. "I lost control for a second, but I got it back. I'm so sorry." Dowsett, a stern man, studied Elvis. "We'll need to report this, Elvis. You know that, right?" Elvis nodded, his smile fading. "I know. I'll take full responsibility." The incident was just the latest in a series of missteps that seemed to follow Elvis in Hawaii. The island that once promised adventure and escape had become a place of contradictions. Hawaii was a paradise, but it was also a cage, a place where the king's every move was scrutinized and his every mistake magnified. Elvis's journey to Hawaii began with the 1961 film, Blue Hawaii. The movie was a commercial success, painting a picture of the islands as a tropical paradise. Elvis, with his charisma and charm, became the face of Hawaiian tourism, but the reality was far more complex. The films that followed, like Paradise Hawaiian Style, were forgettable, their plots as thin as the paper they were written on. The only thing they managed to do was to cement Elvis's image as a laid-back, carefree beach bum. Alan Smith of NME wrote a scathing review of Paradise Hawaiian Style in 1966. "It all bored me to tears. I sat watching the same old situations and listening to the same old songs, and I thought, in heaven's name, can't they think of anything original and new?" Elvis's films were designed to appeal to teenagers, released during holidays like spring break and summer. They were more like extended advertisements for the beauty of Hawaii, but they also began to chip away at Elvis's edge. The wild, rebellious spirit that made him a legend was slowly being tamed, replaced by a more sanitized, commercialized version of himself. Hawaii, meanwhile, was developing its own musical identity. Martin Denny, the king of exotica, was creating a unique blend of Hawaiian melodies, Latin rhythms, and all-American sentiments. His music, with its exotic sound effects and jazz influences, was a perfect match for the islands. It was a cocktail of culture, a dream world that attracted hip young suburbanites looking for something different from the usual vacation spots. Elvis's presence in Hawaii only added to the allure. He was a part of the semi-ironic world of tiki culture, a style that influenced restaurant design and cocktail bars. Places like Trader Vic's, with their carved teak and Halloween orange decor, became popular hangouts. Exotica and tiki culture created a whimsical, yet unironic, atmosphere that was uniquely Hawaiian. For Elvis, Hawaii was a place where he could be himself, but it was also a place where he could hide. The island's beauty and the adoration of his fans provided a temporary escape from the pressures of fame. But as the years went by, the mask began to slip. The drugs, the weight gain, and the endless string of forgettable films started to take their toll. In 1972, Colonel Parker, Elvis's manager, announced a groundbreaking satellite show from Hawaii. The concert, broadcast worldwide, was a bid to reinvent Elvis as Captain Marvel, complete with a $10,000 diamond-encrusted superhero cape. The show was a success, but it was a last hurrah. By 1977, Elvis's visits to Hawaii were becoming more infrequent. His body was failing him, and the island that once promised adventure now felt like a prison. The last time Elvis visited Hawaii, in March 1977, it was clear that the king was not the same man who had first charmed the islands. He was overweight, and his movements were slow and labored. The locals who remembered his earlier visits watched with a mix of nostalgia and sadness. Elvis played football with them, but it was a sad sight. He couldn't control his own body, and one time he ran right into a cyclone fence, cutting his hand. Elvis's last visit to Hawaii was a poignant reminder of the man he once was. The island that had once been his playground was now a place of reflection and regret. The dream of a world tour, starting in Honolulu, remained just that, a dream, but Hawaii still remembers the king. The only non-World War II books and artifacts in the gift shop at the Pearl Harbor Visitor Center celebrate his time there. His name comes up in conversation more often than Barack Obama's, the island's native son. The North Shore, with its lush, exotic jungle, remains a place of dreams, a place where surfers come to ride the biggest waves, and photographers capture them as they leap over the water like bronzed, dazed superheroes. Elvis Presley's legacy in Hawaii is a complex one. He was a part of the island's culture, a symbol of its allure, but also a reminder of the price of fame. The king may be gone, but his presence still lingers, a mist over the islands, a memory of a time when Hawaii was a place of magic and wonder. Elvis's world was a mix of fame, drugs, and loneliness. As his depression grew, he started to dread his upcoming tour. He was worried about how his fans would react to his weight gain and the revelations from a recent book. His friend David Stanley noticed how distressed Elvis was. "You could see the god. I don't know if it's worth going on mentality," Stanley said. Elvis was constantly worried about what his fans might think. The last time Stanley saw Elvis, the singer was emotional. "He said goodbye to me. He was crying. I love you. He hugged me. I'll never, ever see you again. The next time you see me, it'll be in a higher place and a different plane." Stanley thought little of it at the time, but looking back, it was a sign of things to come. Elvis had a very irregular schedule. He would stay up all night and sleep during the day. His room at Graceland was dark, with black fabric covering the windows to keep out the light. He took a mix of drugs every night to help him sleep, and then more to wake him up. His personal doctor, Dr. George Nishopoulos, prescribed him over 19,000 sedatives, amphetamines, and narcotics in the last 3 years of his life. Elvis was often in a daze, and his body was heavily affected by the drugs. His diet was also out of control. He would eat large amounts of food late at night, like cheeseburgers, fries, and banana splits. One time he even cooked a strange dish for himself, bread with peanut butter and synthetic cheese. When asked why, he simply said, "Because I was hungry." The drugs affected his body in many ways, and he often had trouble with basic functions. Elvis rarely left Graceland, and when he did, it was only to go to nearby places. He didn't like to socialize much and rarely attended parties. Instead, he would invite friends over to watch movies or play music. Graceland was his safe haven, a place where he felt comfortable. The jungle room, with its tiki decorations and waterfall, was one of his favorite spots. He also had a state-of-the-art sound system, and he was always trying to improve it. Elvis's life was full of extremes. He would go from being completely awake to being heavily sedated, from eating massive amounts of food to suffering from constipation. His world was a cycle of ups and downs, and it was taking a toll on his health. In the last months, Elvis was in a bad place. He was in debt, and his health was failing. He was often unconscious, and his once vibrant personality seemed to fade. Fans noticed the change, and some wondered if he had truly sold his soul for rock and roll. When Elvis died at the age of 42, the news spread quickly. Local reporters were initially skeptical, but when a trusted source confirmed it, the shock was real. Radio stations immediately started playing his music, and TV networks aired special tribute. The news was a huge blow to his fans, who had grown up with him as a cultural icon. For many, it was like losing a part of their own identity. In Memphis, the city where Elvis made his mark, the local newspaper praised him as an American cultural phenomenon who who will never be fully understood. For Memphians, he was more than just a famous person. He was a hometown hero. The Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal, from his birthplace, ran a headline that summed up the nation's feelings. "The king is dead. Entire nation mourns death of Tupilo's own Elvis Presley." Even in death, Elvis remained a complex figure. Some saw him as a symbol of the excesses of fame, while others remembered him as a musical genius who changed the world. His legacy lived on, and his music continued to touch the hearts of people everywhere. The news of Elvis Presley's death hit the world like a bolt of lightning. It was August 16, 1977, and the king of rock and roll was gone at the age of 42. The shock was immediate, and the reactions varied from country to country, newspaper to newspaper, and fan to fan. In the United States, the media was quick to respond. The New Yorker, known for its wit and satire, published a piece that captured the essence of Elvis's impact on American culture. The writer described Elvis's voice on his 1954 hit, "That's All Right," as a high, sharp shiver that cut through the self-consciousness of the time. The article highlighted how Elvis, with his raw energy and naivety, had become a cultural icon, even though he was initially dismissed as low culture. The writer also noted the irony of seeing a newsman, full of false authority, trying to condescend to the very thing that had blown him away. Across the Atlantic, the British media had a different take. The Guardian announced, "The king is dead and there will be no replacement," while the Times offered a more nuanced perspective. Philip Norman wrote that Elvis and his promoters never intended to launch a youth revolution. They just wanted to make money. However, the energy and style Elvis brought to the stage created a lasting impact on millions of young people. Norman also pointed out that Elvis's simplicity and lack of outrageousness only added to his legend. The British tabloids, known for their sensationalism, wasted no time in jumping on the bandwagon. The News of the World and the Sunday Mirror ran headlines that bordered on the grotesque, with stories about Elvis's last days, his drug use, and his alleged relationships. Even Jimmy Savile, who would later be exposed as a pedophile, weighed in, claiming that the Elvis he knew wasn't a junkie. The Daily Mail and the Daily Express published long, dramatic articles about Elvis's decline, focusing on his loneliness and the dark fantasies that allegedly plagued him. In the music industry, the reactions were mixed. The Enemy, a leading British music publication, had planned to feature Elvis Costello on its next cover. After Elvis Presley's death, they quickly changed the cover to a 1956 photo of the king, with the headline "Elvis Lives, Remember Him This Way." The issue included multiple obituaries and reflections on Elvis's life and legacy. Writers like Charles Shaar Murray and Mick Farren emphasized how Elvis's stardom had ultimately been too much for him to handle. Murray wrote, "Stardom kills. It wreaks an awful destruction on all but those with the utmost strength and inflexibility, and those with the utmost humility and self-knowledge." Elvis Costello's career, however, got a significant boost from the same issue. Enemy star writer Nick Kent wrote a profile that highlighted Costello's talent and potential, helping to cement his place in the music world. The Enemy gossip column was also filled with Elvis-related stories, and the classified section saw a surge in ads for Elvis memorabilia, with slogans like "Elvis Lives" becoming ubiquitous. In Australia, the news of Elvis's death arrived late, around 7:30 a.m. on August 17th. The Melbourne daily The Age reported a surge in sales of Elvis's records and a citywide outpouring of grief. Record stores quickly adorned their windows with Elvis posters and black ribbons. DJ like Stan Rofe felt a personal connection to the news, stopping their breakfast to prepare a tribute. For many Australian fans, the time difference made it feel as though they were experiencing the event in a unique way, almost as if Elvis had died again just for them. In New York, the staff of Rolling Stone magazine, which had just moved from San Francisco, were finishing up their latest issue when the news broke. The issue, featuring a cover by Andy Warhol, was about to go to print. However, Jan Wenner, the magazine's founder, decided to scrap it and produce a special Elvis issue. The decision paid off, as the September 22nd issue, with a vintage photo of Elvis on the cover, became the best-selling issue in the magazine's history. Critics like Dave Marsh and Grail Marcus contributed heartfelt tributes, emphasizing Elvis's significance as the embodiment of rock and roll's virtues and vices. Grail Marcus, who was on vacation in Hawaii when he received the call to write an obituary, found it hard to accept the news. He ordered a Jack Daniels, straight from Tennessee, and stuck to his bourbon despite the barman's suggestion of a blue Hawaii drink. The Rolling Stone staff, working in a sweltering, half-furnished office, managed to pull off the special issue, which captured the essence of Elvis's life and the emotional impact of his death. In the end, Elvis Presley's death was more than just the passing of a celebrity. It was a moment that resonated deeply with fans around the world, each of whom found their own way to remember and mourn the king of rock and roll. The news hit the Rolling Stone office like a thunderbolt. Peter Herbst, a young news editor, walked into Jan Wenner's office to find him slumped behind his desk, red-faced and clearly distraught. Wenner looked as if he had been crying for a long time. "It's a cover," he blubbered, wiping his face with a handkerchief. Herbst, confused, didn't understand at first. "It's a cover," Wenner repeated, raising his voice. Herbst then realized what Wenner meant. They were going to scrap the current issue and produce a special edition entirely dedicated to Elvis Presley, who had just died. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, had been found unconscious in his bathroom, his pajamas around his ankles, one hand in a jar of goober grape, and the other clutching the Bible. The news was shocking, and the office was filled with a mix of sadness and urgency. Jan Wenner, a rock enthusiast and the founder of Rolling Stone, knew that Elvis was more than just a musician. He was a cultural icon who had changed the world. For many, Elvis was the spark that ignited their adolescence, the one they believed in, and the one who made rock and roll more than just music. It was a way of life. Wenner was determined to honor Elvis in the best way he knew how, by creating a special issue that would capture the essence of the king. The staff, despite being tired and looking forward to a break, understood the importance of the task. An ad hoc features meeting was quickly organized, and plans for the new issue were laid out. Journalists were sent to Tupelo, Mississippi, where Elvis was born, to Memphis's Forest Hill Midtown Cemetery, where he was laid to rest, and to Los Angeles, where Ben Fong Torres was sent to interview Elvis's former bodyguards. These bodyguards, who had been criticized in the past, were now willing to share their stories for the magazine. Wenner also managed to secure a piece written by Caroline Kennedy, who had been invited to the funeral. The New York Daily News had rejected her article, but Wenner saw its value and had it rewritten. The Rolling Stone team worked tirelessly for 4 days, fueled by sandwiches, beer, and the sound of Elvis's early recordings playing on the stereo. The office was a chaotic but passionate environment, with everyone pushing through the fatigue to create something special. When the issue was finally ready, Peter Herbst held an early copy in his hands and looked out the window at Central Park. He, like Wenner, was moved to tears. They had done it. They had served the king well. The issue was a magnificent production, filled with heartfelt tributes and elegantly written articles. John Landau's 1971 concert review was reprinted as a memorial, and various rock legends shared their thoughts on Elvis. Roy Orbison remembered his last meeting with Elvis backstage in Vegas, where they talked about the early days and the people they admired. Paul Simon recalled the first time he heard Elvis, thinking he was a black guy, and later growing his hair like him and imitating his stage act. Bruce Springsteen spoke about Elvis's importance, saying that nothing would ever take the place of the king. Even the punk rockers, who were known for their rebellious spirit, had something to say. John Lydon, better known as Johnny Rotten, summed up Elvis's passing with a blunt, "Fucking good riddance to bad rubbish." But for those who had grown up with Elvis, the tributes were filled with respect and fondness. The death of Elvis marked the end of an era. It was August 16th, 1977, and the world of rock and roll would never be the same. The counterculture that had flourished in the 1960s and 1970s felt like it was coming to a close, and Rolling Stone, a magazine that had been at the forefront of that cultural movement, was now mourning the loss of the man who had made it all possible. Elvis's death also had a profound impact on the country music industry. Before Elvis, country music was often seen as a regional genre, but he helped to bring it to a wider audience. Marty Robbins, Sonny James, and Johnny Cash all benefited from Elvis's influence, and country music became more mainstream as a result. In the wake of Elvis's passing, dozens of tribute magazines and books were produced, and his films started appearing on television more frequently. RCA, Elvis's record label, released old records and new packages of previously recorded material, keeping his music alive and popular. By the end of the year, 6 Elvis albums were high in the US charts, and the trend continued with the release of more albums and compilations. Elvis's death even inspired a stage production in London. Jack Good, a rock impresario, created a musical called Elvis, which opened in November 1977. The show featured 3 actors playing different stages of Elvis's life, and it won Best Musical at the Evening Standard Drama Awards the following year. In Japan, the news of Elvis's death was met with tears. For years, Elvis had been an icon in Japan, representing a blend of outrageousness and anodyne charm. He was seen as a healer, a symbol of the American dream that had touched people around the world. For the rest of 1977 and much of 1978, Elvis's presence was felt everywhere in the U.S. His music played on the radio, his films were shown on television, and the media couldn't get enough of him. For many, it felt as if they were living in the United States of Elvis. The country seemed to be infused with his spirit, from the leather and pomade to the dogwood trees around Memphis and the sound of his early recordings. Elvis was more than just a musician. He was a cultural phenomenon. His death marked the end of an era, but his legacy continued to live on, influencing generations to come. Elvis Presley's influence stretched far beyond the borders of the United States. In Japan, his presence was particularly strong. When his Aloha from Hawaii via satellite show aired on January 14, 1973, it captured nearly 40% of the audience, breaking all Japanese television records. This was during a nationwide Elvis Presley week, showing just how much the king was loved in Japan. When I first visited Tokyo in 1982, I made a point to go to Yoyogi Park. It was a Sunday morning, and the park was filled with young men dressed in classic 1950s Americana. They had greased back hair, Levi jeans, and even specific brands of handkerchiefs in their pockets. Their girlfriends wore pencil skirts and looked demure. They were all perfectly styled, paying homage to Elvis. This tradition started right after Elvis's death in 1977, and it was a family affair for some. One young man told me that his father had encouraged him to worship Elvis, making it a family tradition. "Elvis is the king," he said with a deep respect in his voice. Tokyo's fashion tribes, known as Kei in Japanese, became a significant part of the city's culture. These groups, like the rockabillys, punks, mods, goths, and others, would gather in Yoyogi Park or take Shitadori, a street that became the heart of Tokyo's fashion scene. By 2010, there were even more niche groups, like Dolly Kei, Lowly Kei, and Jiruos. The rockabillys, now called rollers, still showed up, their thinning hair styled into quiffs. After Elvis died, his image was quickly commercialized. Colonel Parker, Elvis's manager, took control of the estate, and soon all sorts of Elvis merchandise flooded the market. There were figurines, plates, and even vials of Elvis's sweat. A winery in Michigan even produced a white wine with Elvis's picture on the label. The colonel even wrote a commemorative poem, earning himself a hefty sum in royalties. It was a bit ironic, given that Elvis didn't like wine. Graceland, Elvis's home in Memphis, became a major tourist attraction. By the second anniversary of Elvis's death, there was a shopping mall across the street, filled with Elvis merchandise. From teddy bears to hound dog slippers, there was something for everyone. Even dirt from Graceland and Elvis breath were for sale. Elvis's image continued to inspire artists. Peter Blake, a British pop artist, created a painting called Girls with Their Hero, depicting fans in a frenzy over Elvis. Andy Warhol, the famous American artist, used Elvis's image in many of his works, creating large-scale portraits that commented on fame and the public image. Elvis's legacy is so strong that the term Elvis year was coined to describe the year when a product or person reaches peak popularity. In 1995, a piece in Wired magazine described 1993 as the Elvis year for the children's character Barney the dinosaur. Even today, Graceland remains a significant pilgrimage site. In 2006, Japanese Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi visited Graceland and even sang one of Elvis's songs. When I visited Graceland in 1994, I was struck by how small and tacky it was inside. The house felt claustrophobic, and I couldn't imagine living there. I spent some time outside, staring at Elvis's grave, feeling a mix of awe and disbelief. It was a memorable but overwhelming experience. Years later, I wondered if Graceland had changed. The management had improved the experience, and the surrounding area had been gentrified. When I returned in 2013, I was more prepared. As I walked through the gates, I softly sang Paul Simon's "The Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar," feeling a deeper connection to Elvis's world. Graceland, with its mirrors and white furniture, was a reflection of Elvis's larger-than-life persona. It was a place where the king truly reigned, and his parents, Gladys and Vernon, were like the city's own royalty. Despite its kitsch and commercialism, Graceland remained a powerful symbol of Elvis's enduring legacy. Graceland, the sprawling mansion where Elvis Presley once lived, is a place that defies easy description. It's not just a house. It's a time capsule, a museum, and a shrine all rolled into one. When you step inside, you're not just entering a building. You're stepping into a piece of history, a world that's been frozen in time since 1977. The house itself is a design marvel, though perhaps not in the conventional sense. It's a mix of different styles, each room telling a story of its own. Some rooms are so over the top that they feel almost comical, but that's part of what makes Graceland unique. The pool room in the basement, for example, is a riot of colors and materials, with chrome and glass everywhere. It's the kind of room that would be right at home in a 1970s disco. But then there's the jungle room, with its Hawaiian-inspired decor. Elvis bought all the furnishings for this room in less than 30 minutes, and it's hard to imagine what he saw in his mind that day. Despite its eccentricities, Graceland is far from being a kitsch nightmare. It's a reflection of its owner, a man who was as complex as he was charismatic. Elvis didn't just live in this house. He created it, room by room, with each addition telling a story about his life and his tastes. The TV room in the basement, with its yellows and blues, is a perfect example. It's a room that could have been designed by any number of famous artists, and yet it's uniquely Elvis. The management of Graceland has done a remarkable job of preserving the house, while also making it accessible to visitors. When you walk through the grounds, you're not just visiting a museum. You're stepping into a theme park dedicated to the king of rock and roll. The area around the house has been transformed, with modern amenities and attractions that make the experience feel more like a day at Universal Studios than a solemn pilgrimage. Elvis's car collection is a must-see, with vehicles like his purple Cadillac and his Stutz Black Hawk on display. You can even climb aboard his private planes, imagining what it must have been like to fly in such luxury. The audio tour is a bit surreal, especially when it solemnly informs you that Elvis died of heart failure. It's a stark reminder that this place is as much about remembering the man as it is about celebrating the legend. Memphis, the city where Graceland is located, is a city of museums, each one telling a different story about the region's rich history. There's the National Civil Rights Museum, housed in the Lorraine Motel where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, and the Rock and Soul Museum, which captures the spirit of the city's musical heritage. But no matter how many museums you visit, it's hard to escape the omnipresent image of Elvis. His face is everywhere, from the airport to the hotel, and even on the breakfast menu at local diners. The first floor of Graceland, however, remains a mystery. It's a private sanctuary, a place where Elvis could be himself, away from the fans and the media. This floor has never been open to the public, and it's guarded by a team of security personnel, who ensure that no one breaches the sanctity of the space. Priscilla and Lisa Marie are the only ones allowed up there, and they've kept the rooms exactly as they were when Elvis last saw them. The bedroom, with his clothes still hanging in the closet, and the bathroom, with his cologne and personal items still on the shelves, are a testament to the man who once lived there. Elvis's life and death have inspired a cult following that shows no signs of fading. Fans have cataloged every jumpsuit he wore, and some have even claimed to have recorded every TV program that mentioned him since his death. There are Elvis-themed cafes, documentaries, and even a tree that grew into his profile. The stories of his supposed sightings are endless, from a fishmonger in Hounslow to a grocery store in Palm Beach. These tales, no matter how far-fetched, are a testament to the enduring power of his legend. One of the most touching stories is that of a Georgia policeman who had a dream about Elvis, where the king told him about his son's drug problem. The dream led the father to his son, and in a way, Elvis had saved a life. It's stories like these that keep the legend alive, making Elvis more than just a dead rock star, but a living presence in the hearts of his fans. Graceland, in all its glory and mystery, is a place where the past and the present collide. It's a testament to the enduring legacy of Elvis Presley, a man who continues to defy our expectations, even in death. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, left a mark so deep that even today, decades after his last performance, he continues to influence and captivate. The way he combined the sounds of country, blues, and gospel with his own unique style made him a phenomenon. But it wasn't just his music. It was the way he lived, the way he dressed, and the way he became a cultural icon that set him apart. When the U.S. tabloids finally managed to get mainstream media attention with a story about Bill Clinton's alleged affair, many people saw it through the lens of Elvis. A tabloid writer even said, "This is bigger than Elvis, because for the first time, the rest of the press has to come to us." This comment shows just how significant Elvis was in the world of media and celebrity. He was the benchmark for what people considered big news. Elvis's larger-than-life persona made it difficult for filmmakers to capture his essence. There have been few biopics about him, and even those struggle to do justice to his legacy. Sally Green, an impresario, once said, "Elvis is simply too big for a biopic. People are scared of tackling him. He is bigger than a biopic." This fear is understandable when you consider how deeply Elvis is ingrained in popular culture. He can still hijack the media on a slow news day, whether it's a story about someone spotting him in a supermarket or a fun run named after him. Elvis's influence extends beyond the United States. Kirsty MacColl's 1981 single, "There's a Guy Works Down the Chip Shop Swears He's Elvis," was a hit and was even covered by Norwegian and Swedish artists. The song's popularity shows how Elvis's fame spread across the globe. Even today, there are nearly 200 songs about or referencing Elvis, from various genres and artists. Elvis's influence is so strong that he has been claimed by different groups, even the Scots. There are official Elvis tartans, like the Presley of Lawn May and the Presley of Memphis, which combine Scottish and American elements. These tartans are a testament to Elvis's universal appeal, and the way he has been embraced by diverse cultures. Elvis has even been embraced by the jazz community. In 2007, Cyrus Chestnut released Cyrus Plays Elvis, a jazz album that brought Elvis's music into a new genre. While some jazz purists were skeptical, the album was generally well received, showing that Elvis's music can transcend traditional boundaries. Elvis impersonators have become a phenomenon in their own right. From Las Vegas wedding chapels to working men's clubs, you can find people dressed up as Elvis almost anywhere. The ease with which tribute artists can mimic his look and style has made him a popular choice for performances. Warren, a friend of mine, got married in a Vegas chapel and found that even finding an Elvis impersonator at short notice could be a challenge. The Graceland Wedding Chapel, where many celebrities have tied the knot, continues to offer Elvis-themed weddings, complete with flowers, photography, and even internet broadcasts. Elvis's impact on music and culture is undeniable. Bono of U2 once wrote, "Elvis changed everything musically, sexually, politically. In Elvis, you had the whole lot. It's all there in that elastic voice and body." His influence is so profound that in 1992, the U.S. Postal Service allowed citizens to vote on which image of Elvis to use for a commemorative stamp. Over 1.2 million votes were cast, and the young Elvis won by a landslide. The stamp remains one of the most popular in U.S. history, further solidifying Elvis's status as a cultural icon. Elvis's legacy is complex. He arrived at a time when societal norms were beginning to shift, and he became a symbol of freedom and rebellion. Despite his struggles, his creativity and inspiration continue to burn bright. As Lester Bangs once said, "Elvis was a force of nature. Other than that, he was a big dumb hillbilly couple of points smarter than his mule who wandered out from behind his plow one day to cut a record for his sainted mother and never came back." In 2013, the tech company Momoko released a flash drive shaped like Elvis, offering a choice between a GI Blues era, Elvis and the jump-suited 1973 Aloha from Hawaii Elvis. This shows that even in the tech world, Elvis's influence is felt. Elvis's presence is a constant reminder of the power of music, and the enduring influence of a true cultural icon. Whether it's through his music, his fashion, or his cultural impact, Elvis remains a significant figure in the hearts and minds of people around the world. Elvis had come a long way since his first hit, That's All Right. His voice, his presence, and his music had captured the hearts of millions. It's Now or Never was a brilliant example of how he could take a traditional Italian song, O Sole Mio, and turn it into a rock and roll classic. The song was more than just a melody. It was a testament to Elvis's ability to blend different genres and create something entirely new and captivating. By 1960, Elvis was a household name. He had served his time in the Army and returned with a renewed sense of purpose. It's Now or Never became a massive hit, reaching #1 on the charts and selling over 5 million copies. The song's romantic lyrics and Elvis's soulful delivery made it a timeless classic, one that would be remembered for generations to come. But It's Now or Never was more than just a song. It was a symbol of Elvis's enduring influence on popular culture. He had started a revolution with That's All Right, and now, with It's Now or Never, he was showing the world that he could evolve and stay relevant. His music was a blend of rock, country, and pop, and it resonated with people of all ages. Elvis's journey from a young singer in Memphis to a global icon was nothing short of miraculous. He had faced challenges, from critics who doubted his talent to the pressures of fame. But through it all, he had stayed true to his roots and his passion for music. It's Now or Never was a reminder of why people loved him so much. It was about taking a chance, living in the moment, and not letting opportunities slip away. As the 1960s progressed, Elvis would continue to make music that touched the hearts of his fans. His legacy would grow, and his influence would be felt in every corner of the music industry. But no matter how much time passed, It's Now or Never would always be a shining example of his genius and the impact he had on the world.